Hi everyone, welcome to School of Scarlett. It's so good to see you today. Today I thought that we would talk about unconscious people and how to deal with them. So I want to kind of do it in a chit chat style. I was actually just doing yard work. It's been a pretty busy day. I've had a feminine course that just started. I've had a couple one-on-one sessions earlier today, and so I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit, so bear with me. But as I was picking up these sticks, I was just kind of recalling everything that happened from the day. And I just noticed that there was quite a few people within like my one-on-one sessions that were sharing this whole thing about unconscious people. The frustration with people that they have to deal with that are unconscious. Now, what do I mean by that? The people that I was having this session with were describing that they had an awakening, a spiritual awakening, something that awakened them to love, something that awakened them out of that fear-based consciousness that so many people are living in. And so they no longer feed fear, right? So they're not feeding fear, they're not feeding these unconscious storylines, let's say. So their frustration comes with being around people that feel these limitations to be real, that perceive this and kind of spew out all of this, stuff. And so, they're talking about friends, they're talking about coworkers that are just sitting there and spewing out all of these lies, within the illusion. It's just a storyline. It's no different than anything else. But they're basically saying, this is going to happen. The economy is so bad. Everything's going to tank. This is going to go bad. So basically, really prophesizing things within their own being that's just coming out of their fear. Okay. So that's coming out of fear. And so a lot of people that have had a shift, an awakening, really don't buy into that. It just doesn't occur on their radar. It's not something that we feed into or believe to be true. So it may appear delusional, but it really isn't. It's no more or less delusional than believing those things to be true. There's actually less evidence for those things to be true. But anyhow, the whole thing around being around unconscious people is that it could be very draining and also triggering, believe it or not, for people that have had awakenings. And so what ends up happening is that people want to help people. And it's not so much like convert them, but they want to tell them, hey, why don't you do this? And I've been guilty of this myself. Really wanting to help someone that you perceive to be unconscious and that you perceive needs your help. Now, a lot of times the problem comes in when you do this unsolicited. So the person is confused. So you step in and try to give them a different perspective. And maybe they still continue on with whatever they're doing and they disregard your perspective or don't, take that help and apply it. Then the next time it's even more frustrating when they end up in the same situation with the same story. And then maybe you start to get even more frustrated and you're just like, just do this. This is what you need to do. And you flat out tell them and they still don't do it. And they come back with their stories that this is still going on and this and that. And so it becomes very frustrating to the person that has basically learned how to transcend these things. And so this can be very frustrating to the point that the person that is awakened no longer wants to be in connection with this person anymore. And this is a lot of times where we see that friendships fall away. These acquaintances fall away, but there are cases where people just can't fall away, especially not immediately. Maybe it's somebody that you work with and you're not planning to leave your workplace. Maybe it's a family member and you're not wanting to lose any of your family. You love your family. It's not about that, but it is hard to be around these people because of their limitations. And we have to learn to be around these people. So the way that I've learned to be around this is to really realize that it would be very selfish of me or even irrational of me to want everyone to awaken at the same time that I do. We all have different paths. We all have different experiences of life and things that have to unfold for us. If you followed my channel and you followed me for any bit of time, you know that my unfolding was pretty spontaneous, but a lot of it made sense. A lot of it was stepping stones from one thing to another, and which led me to start this channel and to speak of this. So it all kind of made sense. A lot of the things that I speak of, I can only speak of because I've had direct experience with it. If I hadn't had the direct experience of it, I wouldn't be able to share something here. So, for example, if I wanted everyone to awaken when they are 5 years old or 3 years old, because I want everyone here on earth to be an awakened being, well, that would be a very boring place, don't you think? Or let's say I suddenly awakened now and I want the whole world to awaken, and, or whatever. It's very selfish to think that way. We're all awakening and, to this at different times. I have talked to people that have awakened at 20 years old, and I've talked to people who have had an awakening at 70 years old. Okay, now the person that is 70 years old and had that awakening, is there something wrong with that person's life, with their experience of life, that they awakened at 70 years old as opposed to at the ripe age of 20? No. They have a long lived experience of direct experiences within their being. And so they would be able to help or give wisdom to those people who have been on the journey a lot longer, or have been feeling or perceiving life this way for that amount of time. Or maybe that person has had such a long life that they've had so many different experiences that they can connect and talk about all of these experiences with people and gain a greater connection. Now, one of the reasons that I'm able to talk about so many things on this channel is because of my direct experiences, and a lot of those came from my life. My life has been very full, and it has been very unconscious, believe it or not. Most of my life, up until a couple years ago, I was living completely unconscious, and I wouldn't take any of that back here today. Those were experiences that I needed, that I enjoyed actually. In the time I was in them, of course it was painful, and some of the things, I was suffering and all this, but the growth that came from that, the understanding I have now, I couldn't have gained unless I had gone through it directly. So even if I had had an awakening at the young age of 5 years old, well, that would be great. But I wouldn't have the knowledge or the direct experience of so many lived experiences that I've had, that I've lived through unconsciously. And the majority of people on our earth are unconscious. So for me to connect, or for you to connect, it wouldn't be a bad thing to just lead your life. And whenever your awakening happens, it happens. There's no rush. There's no reason for rush, and there's no reason to push others. We can respect them where they're at. And even if we were to speak of some of these things with some of these people, they wouldn't have the ears to hear. It would literally go past them, or they would see it as something bad. So there's no point in fighting these battles with these people, because they're actually going to perceive it as something bad. So there's no reason to go into a battle. One of the things that I always close my courses with is my kind of suggestions for life. And one of them is not to impede on anybody's free will. Allow them to be as they are, how they are. And if the way that they are is so vastly different from the way that you currently are, and it's unbearable, or doesn't go in line with the alignment that you want to take, then separate yourself from that person. Allow that person to separate themselves from you. Let that connection go and let it go. If it is a family member, you can continue to have a connection with them. The unconscious actually work with the unconscious work with the conscious. They help each other. They awaken each other. The conscious, the unconscious, and the conscious together mingling, They pick up on each other's frequencies, their energies, and they awaken each other in just simply being together. While one is totally unconscious and one is conscious, that alone allows it to merge. So they work together. You don't have to say a word. You just have to be in each other's presence. And believe it or not, the unconscious beings, let's say it's your family. See, family is very triggering, even when you are awakened. So spending time with family, even if they're so unconscious that they trigger you, is actually a blessing for you, because they point out like a mirror things about yourself that you're not seeing yet. Blind spots. See, we've always had blind spots. Think of prior to your awakening. Prior to your awakening, you thought you were seeing everything clearly. But after your awakening, you realized you had seen everything so messed up, so wrong. And you only knew that after the fact. So there are blind spots, and don't think that you've ever reached a mark. There is no mark. There is no mark. So you may have a wider understanding, a wider net, a meta view, but don't think that there is, something that you've obtained. There's nothing to obtain. There's just infinity happening, and infinity is quite large, don't you think? So there's going to be a lot happening, and a lot that you may or may not see coming, especially as your limited human self. So this is all things for you to consider. And just going along the lines that, if someone had awakened at 7 years old or 5 years old or whatever young age, they just wouldn't have that knowledge. Now, they would still have something to share with someone that was also going through that had also awakened at 7 or 5 years old. So we have to just honor everybody's path. Doesn't matter how it happens or if we think it's the right time. Is it too soon? Is it too late? Am I ever going to do it? Is this going to happen, this or that? That is not for us to worry about. We just need to go along our path, following our heart and following what feels good for this being authentic to who we are. And in doing that, everything that we need will align and get straightened out on its own. Those unconscious beings, if they're not meant to be on your path, on your timeline, they will fall away. But if you play into the story that these unconscious beings are hindering your growth, that these unconscious beings are keeping you a victim, are keeping you back, then you are playing into the timeline of victimhood, that you are the victim and you are not. So let's step away from that. Let's allow everyone to be as they are, as unconscious as they are, as they want to be. Allow them to be that way. If you require more solitude, if you require to live further away from society, if you require hermitage, if you require that you change your job, that is something that you would have to do following your heart. That would be emerging from your heart. And I encourage you to do that. If you do not feel well around the unconscious beings that you work around, or whatever happens to be the case, navigate to those places that feel good, that uplift you, that keep you feeling like home. That is where you belong. So you want to go towards those things. Along that path, you will definitely encounter unconscious beings, but give them the same grace and respect as if it were you many years ago when you were unconscious. You knew no better. You couldn't have made this awakening happen. You couldn't have planned it. This is basically like a gift that happened to you. It's not something that you could have made happen. So how can you expect or require anyone else to act in a way that they should have done something to have this already? You didn't do it that way. It didn't happen that way for you. It was a gift. Allow people the grace to be who they are, and in being who they are and you supporting and loving them, that is how they awaken. I love you all.